What's up, everybody? It's Stephen A. Williams, president and founder of the creditrepairshop.com, and in today's video we're going to talk about dealing with court summons from a debt collector. Debt collectors are, I know I say this a lot, but they are ramping up the, number one, the court summons, but they're also stepping up their game on what they're requiring for people to do in the response. So the normal way that most debt collector court summons would come through is where they would have their court summons and they would have their allegations, and then they would have their demand or what they wish for the court to decide, and then you have to respond to that court summons, and then you would get a hearing, and then some of the times the debt collector might not show up, some of the times they might show up, and then they see that you showed up, and they would just say, hey, if you respond, this is if you responded the right way, then they would say, hey, we want to dismiss the case, and or they would just say, okay, let's let the judge go through with making a decision, and that decision is going to be based off of what your response is. And if your response is done the right way, if you craft your response, number one, your response to their allegations, which is those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it could be up to 20 depending on the attorney who puts it together for them. So your response to those need to be done a certain way. And I see one huge mistake is that people are just denying. So yes, you are supposed to admit or deny, but if you put a response with that, because you are allowed to say not enough information to admit or deny, and then you have a response afterwards, it could let the debt collector know, hey, this is the problems that we could run into when dealing with this particular individual that we're trying to sue. And then in the end, on your side, on your response, you put your affirmative defense, which is where you're stating, number one, based off of their information that they gave you, you want to, number one, tear that apart, which we're going to get into in this video. You want to tear that apart, because if their case is built on their documents and you can tear their case down because of their documents, because of what they supplied to you, and then you add a little bit of a touch on there with some of the other things that were either missing or things that that they have to do pertaining to suing you as a debt collector, it really, a lot of these are just like case closed. You're going to win, but you have to say it a certain way. That's something that I think is like what separates all of us from each other. It's like you could do something a certain way or say it a certain way that I can't say it, and I can say and do things a certain way that you can't say it. But when it comes down to responding to these court summons, I've just, from trial and error, from reading, educating myself, from looking at the losses, looking at the victories, this stuff comes down to the way stuff is said. I mean, remember Johnny Cochran said, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. And I'm pretty sure there's some other attorneys that have said things in court a certain way, and people just get it. It's like, if you say it this way, definitely the judge gets it, because we got tons of cases that were dismissed. But the actual plaintiff gets it and be like, we can't move forward with the way this is. We're going to be running into a trap. So the way that these debt collectors have started stepping up their game is that we're starting to see with the summons, which is crazy. Some of the times I don't know if people are really telling us the truth, because we have to kind of get it out of people. It's like, we're on your side, so just be upfront with us. So first, let me just take you down what could happen. So if you have a court summons and you don't respond to the court summons, the next step of the debt collector is going to be to motion for default judgment or motion period for a judgment or motion for summary judgment. It would depend on the area, but if you've responded, they're going to motion for summary judgment. If you don't respond, they're going to motion for default judgment. And when that happens, you have to do a few things. Is you have to still respond to the initial summons, but you also have to respond to get the judge to deny the motion for either the default judgment or the summary judgment. Now, you can't have a default judgment if you're there, but what they're trying to say is that you didn't respond to the initial summons request, so they want a default judgment because you're not responding to anything. Maybe you didn't even show up to the first hearing. And some of the times when you don't show up to the first hearing, some of these judges, what they've started doing is that they will not allow judgments to be put into place. They will not allow it. So stepping up their game, though, what I've started seeing some of the debt collectors do, and these are debt collectors that we have helped clients win cases against. And basically what they try to do is they try to just make it harder. They're just like, okay, if you're going to respond to that court summons, we're going to give you all this other stuff that we want you to respond to. So the next level that debt collectors will take stuff to is that they're going to make that motion for summary judgment, and they're going to put all their documents together. I'm kind of reviewing one here that I'm going to be helping the client work on. They're going to put all their stuff together. They're going to say that that they dotted their I's and crossed their T's, and that they want to move to have a summary judgment put in place based off of the documents that they provided. And to step it up a level is that they're going to request that the plaintiff answer interrogatories, which is a word that I have a lot of trouble saying, interrogatories, and requests for production of documents. If you've ever received one of these, this is when a debt collector, I would say that this is when they know that they're going to lose. And they'll do this last-ditch effort to try to trap people. Now, if you've ever received this before, or you haven't, I'm about to kind of go through it with you. When most people get it, they're like, oh, it's over, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose. When you're not going to lose, but you do have to be truthful with the document. Because they're going to ask questions like this. They're going to say, other than just regular personal stuff, they're going to say, let me pick one here that people would have problems answering. It says here, I think this one, they're asking just a lot of questions that are just going to be yes questions on here. So it says here, request for documents. Produce any documents which you contend relate to and or support the answers given to the immediate preceding interrogatories. So preceding that, it said request of production of documents. Produce any documents in which you contend to relate. This is like they asked the same question. I wonder if the person who did this had the same question on there. Let's go to another one. This one here must be a template, which what they did, because they asked the question and then they would say right after the question any documents that you're going to produce with it. So they've kind of put these two together. They usually would have one for documents, and then one for interrogatory. So they kind of put this together. They put this in a way that I haven't seen before. But so here's one of the questions. It says here that they want, did you have an account with such and such company? But then they will have another question where they'll say, do you admit that you owe the plaintiff? Now, the plaintiff is not the original creditor. The plaintiff is a debt collector. So, of course, you wouldn't admit to owing a debt collector, but then they have a question there, do you admit that you owe the original creditor? They would have that in the document. So this is where you're going to have to do some of your homework, and you're going to have to look up your state law to see how you can answer that question. In most states, you would not have to answer the statement about the original creditor, because that would be something private between you and the original creditor. And even if they did say in your state that you have to answer that question, you could still answer that question and then put, and the new owner, the plaintiff, has not provided the documentation that from the communication with the original creditor. This puts them in a trap, because what they'll try to say is that, did you dispute any information regarding the account with the original creditor? And if you did, you need to provide that in this production request to produce documents. Now, you know, I know, they know, judge knows, these are accounts from years ago. You're not going to have that stuff. You're not even going to really remember the communications, unless it was something that was like a deep dispute with the original creditor, where there was fraud and all that type of stuff. You're not going to really remember and know. So what you would do is you would just answer that, say, hey, there was communication with them, and because you are the new owner and you assume responsibility for this debt, I'm requesting that documentation from you. I do not recall the specifics of it. I did not maintain those documents. And you are required to get those documents. That's why I say you got to do your homework, and you got to understand what these companies have to have when they assume that debt. Yes, Supreme Court said that a debt collector who buys a debt assumes the position of the original creditor, but also when you assume the position of the original creditor, that means that you have to get all of the information that the original creditor would have to produce if the consumer asks for it from the original creditor. So it kind of traps them. So this one here, they really didn't go into too much detail on that side, but here's another set for request of admissions. So they say this defendant had an account, and they mentioned the original creditor. They said that, is the principal balance accurate? The balance suit in this action is due and owing by defendant to plaintiff. That is a trick question. You never had any account with the plaintiff. Defendant is not entitled to any credits, offsets, or deductions except as previously been deducted. You don't. Now, this statement here, are they talking about the original creditor, or are they talking about the plaintiff, who is the new owner of the debt? That's why you have to be very careful with answering these. You're going to have to put some deep thought into answering these, and you have to, in a way, put on your thinking cap and say, okay, does this question pertain to the plaintiff as the new owner of the debt, or does it pertain to the the original creditor? And if your state allows you to not answer any questions when it pertains to the original creditor, not the company who buys the debt, you do not even have to answer that question, because it's private information between you and the other company. And if your state says that you do have to answer that question, and all you have to do is look online and say, for your state, what can and can't do on those requests for admissions and the interrogatories. It will tell you this is what you can do and what you can't do for your state. It's wrote. I wish it was the same for all states. It is not. But I can tell you that from experience, from dealing, the judges, even though you might have to answer it, if you put and I'm requesting such and such from, or let me be more specific. I'm not going to say such and such. They ask a question, defendant is not entitled to any credits, offsets, or deductions except as have previously been deducted. If you live in a state where you don't have to answer that question because it's with the original creditor, boom, you already know that answer. But you live in a state where you do have to answer that question, you can put on there that the new owner, that whoever the plaintiff is, or the plaintiff who has assumed this debt, has not provided all of the detailed accounting information that was, how can we say it? Just going off the top of my head, but you can construct it better. That was previously, the plaintiff has not provided all of the documentation that I've requested be provided from all transactions, payments, credits, rewards, interest rates, charges with the original creditor. That's how you can come back with that. And got to clean it up a little bit. But that's how you could come back with that, and that could put them into they don't give you all of those documents. That's what I'm talking about. You are putting them back on their heels, and they're like, we gave a few documents, but we don't have a full record of all of the documents to prove that claim of $5,000. We just had a couple of statements, but we're now we assume the position of the original creditor. So now let's get the accounting records. You can't get the accounting records. All of that information for me to be able to make an educated decision on how I want to move forward with this case, you can't even provide me with those documents, and you're supposed to be the owner of this debt. So this stuff is important, and they basically really say the same thing, but they just change the way that they say it in the way that they ask it. Because they're just trying to get to the bottom line trap of, this is your account, this is the amount you owe, and you owe us. With all of these questions, on this one they had 15 questions. On this other one here, they had 15, 21 on this one here. And what basically, I could say that there's really just 10, because what they did with this one is they mixed the request for production of documents, which would be a request for you to produce documents to build your case, which you could flip and use their own documents against them and say, I have no documents to produce, but I will produce the documents that you presented and show the lack and the incompleteness of those documents that you presented. They will more than likely bag out of that case when you do it that way. So when dealing with these court summons, at the beginning it could seem like it's like it's an uphill battle. I do congratulate my YouTube subscribers. Y'all are fighting. I love it. Y'all are fighting. You're not just letting them run over you. But I want you to be careful. Don't just make court summons responses where you're just denying everything. You got to do this the right way. And it has to be like a story. Like, just think of it this way. If you just throw, hey, I deny this, deny that, or if you put it together, craft your response in a good story, your affirmative defense in a good story, point by point, that's what it really is. It's like your story, your defense. If you put that together the right way, you're gonna win. You're gonna win. There's no guarantees, but it's gonna put you in the best position to win. And you can always go to the settlement phase if you lose. Like, a lot of people, they get afraid and they focus too much on what hasn't happened, rather than focusing on taking action, responding to your summons, and letting it move through the process. We're starting to see that if you craft a good summons response, if you get a good summons response, that they will start to extend and say, well, we need to put the case, like some of them say, a year from now. Like, give us a year. The reason why they want to do a year is because they want you to forget. They want you to not show up to that hearing so they can get a default judgment. Because they know that when you did that response, that response was like, hey, this one here is not going to be easy. We need to focus on all these other people that aren't going to do any fighting, that are just going to let default judgments come about. That's the thinking. That's the way that debt collection companies are thinking. So, to quickly review, what you have to do is, first, when you get that court summons, you got to respond to it. You got to respond to it the appropriate way. It's like that's your story. And if some of the times they might step up the game and they might send a summons and a motion, like they'll package all of that up together. But most of the time, they don't do that. We find that when clients come to us and they say that they have a motion for summary judgment, it's because they either responded the wrong way the first time or they didn't respond at all. And it's just the next step in the process for the debt collector to try to collect on that case. All right, if you need help with the court case, there's a link below. Go to my website, go to the live chat and upload your summons for review. We'll let you know how we can help you. Always willing to give you pointers on it. If you need help with your credit, please visit us at thecreditrepairshop.com, where you can watch my video, What Makes Us Different. I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and they were talking about that just sending letters to the bureaus don't work. And if you watch that video is from years ago. I made that video. And you will see what makes us different. And what makes us different is what other companies are trying to do right now. We've always had one side that worked with the bureaus, but the side that got the most results was dealing directly with the furnishers of the information on your credit reports. If you need your credit reports and scores, because you can't move forward without getting all of your credit reports and scores, and knowing where you're at, knowing what does it look like on paper, so you can know how you can move forward. If you know where you're at, you know where you're starting, and then you'll know your progress for moving forward. Go to the website your3scores.com to grab those TransUnion, Equifax, Experian credit reports and all 3 scores. If you have debt collectors who are coming after you trying to get your money before they do the court case, click the link below to grab my 3-pack of letters. Statute of limitations letter for debt that is past the legal statute of limitations for them to collect, and they do still do that. And debt validation letter and cease and desist collection activities letter. Use the one that's appropriate for your situation. Please subscribe to the channel, post your questions and comments. Thank you for your time. This is Stephen A. Williams, President and Founder.